There are two ways to find housing as a traveler. Number one, you can take corporate housing, or number two, you can do what we like to do and take the housing stipend and then find your own housing and save all of the money. So in this video, we are going to go over the pros and the cons of each so that you can decide which option is best for you. So let's get into it.
It's my
We are Kim and Erran. We are healthcare travelers, and on this channel we give you the foundational tools, the building blocks, and all the resources to set yourself up for success as a healthcare traveler.
Plus, our favorite part about traveling is the freedom it allows us to create our own lifestyle, to create our own schedules, to take as much time off as we want, which we like to take a lot of time off. And we love to travel the world and share all of our adventures and experiences and where to go and what to eat and all of the things to give you inspiration on how you can have your own adventures on your time off. So stick around, make sure you subscribe because we release new videos every single week. So let's get into it.
Let's do it. Okay, so housing as a traveler, corporate versus finding your own. This is a huge stress that a lot of travelers have. And one of the things they have is they know that they can save a lot of money by finding their own housing, but it does come with a lot of work. So it seems like the easy way to just take corporate. But that's why this video is here for you. One, this is Kim's jam. I literally bring in the boxes, pack the Jeep, and make sure that, you know, the tires are rotated. That's my job. She finds all of our housing. We find our own housing every time but once. And by finding our own housing, we have saved over $50,000 in the last 8 years in just our housing stipend. And so we are going to give you those pros and cons so you can weigh that out and make the best decision for yourself.
And we also created a whole housing guide, a whole housing module. It's a module inside of our main course that breaks down how we find housing, how we've saved over $50,000. So if you want to dig into that, you can get the link to get that in the description below. Okay, let's start with corporate.
Okay, so taking corporate, what does that actually mean? It actually means when you get your contract, you're telling the company, just find my housing for me. I just want to move in and start my contract. That's pretty much it.
And that money is coming out of your pay package. So they're using that money that they would be paying you, but they're taking that and they're using it to put towards your housing, okay? So what are the pros of that? The pros are, it's super easy. There's no stress because you have to remember that as a traveler, we're moving around every couple of months, right? And so every couple of months, you're essentially having to find a new place to live, and that's what stresses us out. And so when you take corporate, there's no thought, there's no stress. All you do is you take your suitcases or whatever you have, you roll up, and everything is already done for you. So there's furniture, there's electric, there's water, everything is turned on and ready to go. The second thing that I think is huge, especially if you're on a budget in the beginning, is that there's no upfront costs for you. So you don't have to think about deposits, you don't have to think about first month's rent or anything like that. You just show up and you're ready to go without anything coming out of your pocket.
Yeah, and the one thing that you will have to put down is if you do travel with a pet, you do have to put down a pet deposit. And I will add to what Kim said, was when you do take corporate, a lot of times they have deals with a lot of these apartment complexes that are pretty close to the hospital that you will be working at. So they are a closer proximity, and that does make it easier for your commute to work. Alright, so we just gave you the pros, and honestly Kim just said you roll up into your apartment and you're good to go, which sounds amazing. And she said it's completely stress-free and the easiest thing. But just like anything in the world that is really good, there's also some cons, and so we want to jump into that with you as well.
So the biggest con is you're gonna lose money, and that most of the time, right? 9 times out of 10, if you take corporate, you're going to miss out on money that could be in your pocket. So that's the biggest part. So sometimes it's easier, yes, it is, but on the flip side of that, in the long game, you're gonna be losing money.
Yeah, and we took housing one time, and that was in Pacifica, California, because we were going to the Bay Area, and as a lot of you know, the Bay Area is extremely expensive. Kim and I were coming off a long cruise in Europe, and we didn't have a lot
Spent
of
all
money.
our money on limoncello.
Yeah, we did spend all of our money, which was crazy. We were like, we're gonna keep some, but we didn't. We spent it all. Like, we went out like just flinging it.
Lots of pasta.
But then we knew that we had to drive across the country and settle into the Bay Area, and so we didn't want that stress of finding our own housing. Plus, again, we didn't know the area either. So we said, we'll take corporate, and they put us up in a beautiful apartment on the beach in Pacifica. It was absolutely gorgeous. But what happened was, my housing stipend, we were going to find our own housing until we realized it was a little difficult. And so we just forfeited that housing stipend, which was $2,600 a month. The company put us up in the beautiful housing that we said, but they took that entire $2,600 a month away from us. We ended up making friends with the front office of that apartment complex and asked them that if we would have just found this place and asked you for the same apartment that we're in, how much would it have been a month? And they said, oh, that apartment that you're in goes for $1,800. So that was $800 that we forfeited over 3 months, which comes out to $2,400.
Yeah.
Would we have gotten all that in our pocket? No, because we would have had to furnish it, and we would have had to get our own electric, which we will get into, but we would have made money in the end.
We would have, and I think that's where you have to weigh it out. Like, sometimes for us in that moment, it was easier to roll up in with corporate and not have to put down a deposit, except a pet deposit, because we do have a pug. But we lost money in the long game, right? So you have to kind of weigh out those options. The other con is you don't get to choose your location. So you're just going to show up and they're going to tell you where to go, but you don't get to take a look around at the neighborhoods, and maybe you want to stay in a specific location because of X, Y, and Z, or be close to your favorite gym, like we like to do.
Yeah.
We always try to be close to Orange Theory. That's like our thing. And so you don't get to choose that when you take corporate, but if you're finding your own, you do get to have more flexibility around the area you're going to live in.
And the second way is finding your own housing, which is where you take the entire housing stipend that was given to you by the company in your pay package breakdown. And that is tax-free money if you have a tax home. And we are going to assume that you know what a tax home is, but if you don't, leave a comment below if you want us to do a video specifically on tax homes, because we will be happy to do that for you.
And just to reiterate again, this is what we do. We take the housing stipend and find our own housing every single time for the past 8 years. That is what we have done, except that one time in Pacifica. And that's how we've been able to save over $50,000 over the 8 years that we've been traveling.
In just our housing stipend.
In just the housing stipend. And so this can feel a little bit overwhelming in the beginning, but once you find your flow, which you will, right? And once you kind of get some tips and tricks and insights, which is what we're here for, you'll figure it out and it will get easier every single time.
The first con that we're going to say is it does take a lot of time and effort to find your own housing. Whereas in corporate, you're calling your company saying, I'm going to take corporate. They have somebody in their office that finds it for you. When you take your own housing stipend, you find it all. That means finding the location, finding the right apartment. And so that takes a lot of planning and effort on your part. And I am so excited that she likes doing this.
I actually enjoy that part.
She loves figuring out that puzzle. So it's been very good in our relationship.
It does. And it takes a lot of research of the location, of all of the things, and trying to find short term. That's the biggest kicker here, because it's easy to find a year lease everywhere you go. It's about finding the places that offer the short term. And so again, that's one of the biggest cons, because of the time that it takes and the effort it takes for you to figure out where you're gonna live. But once you find your flow with it, and there's tons of great resources and great places to start, you will get better at it and it will get easier every single time. So con number 2 is that you are responsible for all the upfront costs, all of the move-in costs. And so that's going to be your deposit, your first month's rent. If you have a pet, then that's going to be the pet deposit too. And so that can be expensive when you're trying to move in to a new place. And so you have the upfront costs. It's more money in the beginning, but in the long run, you're going to save money, but sometimes you don't have all of that extra cash up front, and that's where people kind of run into trouble. That's why we took the corporate in Pacifica, because we didn't have the upfront money that it costs to move into a new place.
So con number 3 is you are responsible for everything. So everything you want as a bonus inside your apartment, you're responsible for. So you have to set up your electric and your cable and your Wi-Fi. You have to turn it on, but you also have to turn it all off. So you are responsible for all of those accounts upon move in and move out.
And if you're moving into an Airbnb, that's obviously different, right? We're in an Airbnb right now. We can just roll in, or everything's set up for us. That's really nice. Most of the time, we are renting our own apartment that's completely an empty shell because we save money that way. It's usually always cheaper to get an unfurnished place, which we'll do another video on that if you want. If you do, let us know in the comments below. But typically we get an unfurnished place. So that also means that you're responsible for getting furniture and giving it back and all of the things that come along with getting your own place, you are responsible for.
And one of the last things that we want to mention is it's kind of a known thing of when you move into an apartment and when you leave, you have to be responsible for the cleaning. When you're in an Airbnb, you can pay the cleaning fee.
Yeah.
It's usually included in your cost. When you're in an apartment, that apartment needs to be move-out ready when you leave, which then takes a lot of time. Kim and I were just in an apartment in Chico. We moved out, thought we did a really good job, and apparently we didn't. And it took us like 8 hours to clean that apartment. So that
They still charge us $500.
Yeah, they said it wasn't. I know, we're coming after you. No, I'm just playing. But they said we didn't have it move out ready, which then that's a lot of time and effort as well. Move in ready. Whereas an Airbnb, you just get your and get out.
Right. All right, let's get into the pros. So the biggest pro here is money. Finding your own housing comes down to one thing, and that is you make more money, period. You are going to save so much money. That's how we've saved over $50,000. So all the cons we just listed are things to think about and prepare for, and know it does come with it. But at the end of the day, if you're saving thousands of dollars every single contract, it's going to be well worth putting in that little extra time and energy to get your affairs in order to be able to find your own housing. So just a quick example is, and these are just random numbers I'm making up for myself, but if the housing stipend was $3,000 a month, okay, and you found a place for $1,000 a month, you are saving $2,000 a month, which is what? I'm bad at math.
$6,000 over your 3-month contract.
That's a lot of money. That is a trip somewhere really cool, and you can go watch some of our YouTube videos and get some ideas and inspiration for where you want to go.
Yeah, for real. That money goes far in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, it does.
So just to reiterate again with the taking of the corporate, if you have a $3,000 housing stipend and you find that place for $1,000, they're taking the entire $3,000 away from you. They don't find your place for $1,000 or whatever they found it for and give you the change back. It doesn't work that way. That whole housing stipend is forfeited. That's why we're saying that it's 9 times out of 10, 9.95 out of 10, we have saved money in our housing stipend.
100%. Then the second pro is that you get to choose the area you want to live in. So there's more flexibility with the location, and you're in charge of choosing that area instead of the corporate where they're just going to tell you to show up at this address and that's where you're living and you have no say in the matter. So
yeah, and that all comes down to you as a person. Like for instance, Kim and I, we like the ease. We don't like to be commuting far, long distances in between work. One, we have to take call a lot, so we have to be 30 minutes from the facility. We also love the ease and flow of being close to town, close to a place that we could go walk to different places. We're also big Orange Theory fans, so we always want to try to live close to an Orange Theory so that way we can either have the option to work out before we go into work or after. So it makes it that much easier instead of having to drive really far to get to work. So the ease, that's another reason why we're big in finding our own housing, because we get to choose the best location for what we love.
Exactly. So corporate, the pros are it's easy, you show up, no upfront costs, you're not responsible for anything, you just show up, you're ready to go. Cons, you're gonna lose a bleep ton of money, okay? Most of the time, 9 times out of 10, okay? Finding your own housing. The pros, you're gonna make that cash money. You can save potentially thousands and thousands of dollars with every single contract, and you get to choose where you wanna live. The cons and the flip side is that you are responsible for all the things. So you have to find the housing, you have to get the furniture, you have to turn on the electric. You are responsible for everything. But it will be worth it because that cash money that you're gonna save and then go take a cool vacation from there.
All right. Yeah. For the grand finale that we
Hashtag
told you,
pro tip.
hashtag pro tip. We've just told you the pros and the cons, and one of the big cons in finding your own housing is the effort and the time that it takes for you to put into finding that housing. So what we wanted to give you as a pro tip, something that Kim created, which I thought was absolutely genius. It's a way that you can outweigh whether it's worth you even putting in the time to find your own housing before you get started down that long road.
Yeah, and it's super, super simple. I just asked my recruiter, like I've taken the job, right? We're going through the pay packages. And so I have my recruiter give me one pay package that has, if I take corporate housing, what is that gonna look like? How much money am I gonna be taking home every single week? And then I had them do another pay package where they're just giving me the stipend, they're giving me all the money they possibly can, and I'm gonna figure it out on my own. So what I do is I look at each one and I see, okay, this is how much I'm gonna be saving if I take housing, and then this is where it gets interesting. Because I go on the Googles and I look wherever we're gonna be living, okay? So let's say we're gonna go to Milford, Connecticut, which is a place that we went, and the housing was really high. It was really an expensive area to live, and our housing stipend wasn't that high. So if our housing stipend is say $2,800, and I get on the Googles and I just kind of do like a quick, search through and get an overall general idea of what a 3-month lease is gonna look like in that area, and I'm finding places that are like $2,500 a month or $2,600, and my housing stipend is $2,800, I'm gonna look at that and be like, I can save a couple $100 a month, but is that really worth the time and the energy and the effort that it's gonna take me to figure that out? And the answer is no. It's probably gonna be worth it just to take the corporate housing and move in.
And on top of that, with the example she's giving, that actually was a real example.
Yeah.
The cost was different. We just threw numbers out there, but basically that was an empty shell apartment, right? So not only were we only saving $200, but we still had to furnish it. We still had to turn on the electric and the cable and all those things. So that came out a little bit more than our housing stipend.
Right.
And that was one of our other times that we were like, damn,
we probably should have taken corporate, but we didn't. That's a whole nother story for another time of that housing doozy we walked into and had to switch last minute and ended up losing money, essentially. If you're looking and you're finding places, because in these bigger cities, like a San Francisco or a New York City or a Boston or something like that, it might be better in some situations to just take corporate, right? Because they're expensive cities to live in, and it can be more challenging to find cheaper housing. But for the most part, everywhere else in the country, if you're looking and your housing stipend again is $2,800 and you're finding places for $1,000, $1,200, $1,500, then you're like, cool, like I know I'm gonna take the stipend, I can find my own place because I'm going to be saving so much more money, and so it's gonna be worth it.
So that wraps up this video on the pros and cons from corporate housing to finding your own. We hope you took something away from this. If you ever have any questions, do not hesitate to leave them below in the comments. And in the meantime, if you are, thirsty for more information,
thirsty.
You can join us in our Facebook group for healthcare travelers. It's Travel Life Freedom in Scrubs. And also, if you want that deep dive, check out our online course for healthcare travelers where we cover everything you need to know start to finish, including the housing module of Kim's tips. That is extremely useful, extremely helpful, and will set you up for a successful life as a healthcare traveler. So you can check all that out in the description below.
Love it.
And
beautifully said.
Make sure to subscribe.
And we'll
Come
see
back
you next
next week for another video.